Man, I hate being introduced. It's so weird. It reminds me, I saw a speaker one time who said, a guy introduced him and said, Mr. Smith here made $1 million in the oil industry in Texas. And he stood up and said, well, that's a little inaccurate. It actually wasn't Texas, it was California. And it wasn't the oil industry, it was the coal industry. It wasn't $1 million, it was 100,000. It wasn't me, it was my brother, and he didn't make it, he lost it. So that's sort of how I feel. But good afternoon, everybody. As you know, Marjorie Young did an amazing job with telling you and even demonstrating for all of you the potential benefits of live streaming for you and your business. And now that Marjorie told you everything to do, I get the pleasure of standing up here and telling you everything not to do. So I probably should have gone first, but so hopefully in the last 30 days, none of you committed any felonious acts that we need to talk about today. But the good news is that the benefits of live streaming far outweigh the risks involved. So that means my talk today is very short and to the point. So much, so I apologize in advance if anybody here is deeply hurt and disappointed if you love listening to long lunch speeches. So my heart may break a little bit, but all I can say is to all of you thinking, oh no, you don't exist. So let's talk about the legal risks of live streaming. Number one, to get started, let's talk about, there we go. What exactly live streaming is for any of you that weren't here last week or last month. Live streaming is simply using your phone or a camera to broadcast live on the internet. Now, there are numerous apps that do that, Meerkat, Periscope, Twitch, but the most popular right now by far is Facebook Live. And it is so simple, it's literally just you push a button and you're broadcasting live to the world. That is it. Marjorie last month, if you remember, she actually live streamed the entire speech that she was giving while we were all sitting here. That's how simple it is. And she also showed you all the ways in which your business can benefit from it. That included the fact it gives people an inside look at kind of what your business does and what it's all about. People end up tuning in and watching those videos much longer, and they also are extremely less expensive considering a professionally produced video. So there really are a ton of benefits, and again, she demonstrated many ways you can do it. But like everything in life, however, there are legal risks involved if you don't follow the rules. And so those are the rules I'm going to talk about today. Now, what are those rules? Well, luckily for all of you, all of the rules are set forth in each streaming provider's terms of service. And I laugh because I know how many of you actually ever read the terms of service. Even less of you then probably are disappointed that this is going to be a short speech. It will. No one really does that. Nobody ever reads them. But there are really only two main rules that I'm going to talk about today that end up making up 99% of the legal issues people have. The first is that you do not want to live stream produced or copyrighted material for which you do not own the rights or have the permission to use it. So, the first lawsuit over this occurred back in 2015 with the Floyd Mayweather Manny Pacquiao fight. Now, that fight, you may remember, was huge. It ended up smashing pay-per-view records. They made untold amounts of money on that fight, but they were not happy with the fact that a lot of people that paid for the fight then used their phone to live stream it to the entire internet to people who did not pay for it. And so that ended up costing them money, as they believed, and so they ended up bringing tons of lawsuits over the people that live streamed the fight after they had paid for it. Again, it's just common sense. If you had to pay for it, you can't just then broadcast it out to everyone for free. So the people who stand to make money off the content they're not going to be happy with that. So how do you know if you're violating copyright? Well, first of all, I guess the easiest way to sum it up is rule number one is don't be stupid. I mean, you know if you're violating copyright. Yeah, I mean, what you want to do is if you paid for it yourself, you almost certainly are encroaching upon a copyright. Don't live stream something that you had to purchase on pay-per-view. Don't walk into a movie theater or a Broadway show with your phone out and live stream it. Don't be stupid. Come on. Everybody knows you should not do that. That's just common sense. Even if you go to a live sporting event, especially a professional sporting event, if you live stream it, you may run into some charges because there are people that pay a lot of money for those rights to broadcast them. So if you have to pay a fee for the content, don't broadcast it yourself live for free. If you do, the penalties in those situations can be actually extremely severe and expensive. I put it on the slide, for example, that if you go to a concert, you are subject to at least, and you live stream it, and you paid to get in, you're subject to at least 5 different lawsuits at that point. You can get sued by the artist, you can get sued by the label, you can get sued by the publisher, you can get sued by the promoter, and you can even get sued by the venue. And guess what? They probably win. So again, just use common sense. If you had to pay, don't live stream it unless you own the rights to the content. So now, that's rule number one. Don't live stream copyrighted material, which I sum up as don't be stupid. Number 2, I also sum up as this: don't be creepy. The next is privacy concerns. Okay. Now, if you have to determine, if you want to determine whether you're violating someone's privacy, then you just think about location, okay? If you're in a public place, neither you nor anyone around you has what the law calls a reasonable expectation of privacy. So if you're walking down the street, you are subject to being photographed or videoed by any person out there. Now, even in public, however, there are 2 exceptions to the general rule that you can just film or video people or take their picture freely. And the first exception goes back to my summary of don't be creepy. You can't harass people. You can't stalk them. You can't engage in peeping. All of those actions are already illegal. And so if you live stream yourself engaging in those actions, that now goes by a different name. It's no longer live streaming, it's now called evidence. And let me explain what I mean by peeping, okay? I'm not talking about going up and sneaking by someone's window and filming inside. That's through the window shades. That's obviously trespassing, and that's not in a public place. What I'm talking about is using your phone or camera in such a way that it films what other people do not reasonably intend you to see. Putting a shoe or putting a camera on your shoe, for example, and filming up a woman's skirt. That clearly is not cool and clearly falls into the you're being creepy category. And if you don't think that happens, you are wrong. If you Google man arrested for using shoe camera to film up skirts, you will get literally hundreds of results for that. And I say man because yes, invariably it is a man doing it almost every time. So, but trust me, it's common sense. Do not just engage in creepy behavior. So that's number 1, the privacy. That's the first exception to being in public. The second exception, which is probably much more relevant to those of you in this room, only see 3 or 4 of you that look pretty creepy, but I'm just kidding, Cynthia, come on. I didn't point anyone out. The one that is much more likely to be relevant to those of you in here is you're not allowed to just live stream in public for commercial use. In other words, if you're just out there and you're live streaming because you are you have a blog or just for fun or whatever it is, no problem. You can film anything. But if you're doing it as part of an advertisement or for promotional purposes, then every single person that appears in there actually can have a lawsuit against you or claim against you for theft of their identity. Well, not identity, but theft of their, I'm trying to remember what they call it. It's not reputation, but it's something like that. Essentially, if you film people for their, as an advertisement or for commercial use, you have to procure a release from each and every person that appears in your live stream, which is almost impossible if you're out in public and people are walking in and out, that type of thing. So the best rule of thumb is simply, if you're live streaming for a commercial use, don't do it in a public place. Now, going back to if you are not in public, okay, then people have a reasonable expectation of privacy. That is completely different, okay? You should not be live streaming if you are not in public and in a place that you own. Again, this is pretty much common sense. Don't live stream in someone else's house without their permission. Don't follow someone into a doctor's office. Definitely do not follow someone into a bathroom while you are live streaming. That will get you in trouble quickly. If you wouldn't want someone filming you without your knowledge in that situation, then don't live stream yourself. Don't live stream other people. I know that seems like that would never happen, that should be common sense, but nope, happens all the time. So just, again, if you're not in public, make certain that you have permission. So, just to sum up here, number one, don't stream any produced content that you do not own. That includes movies, television, music, other entertainment, any other works of art of any kind, or works of authorship that are likely subject to copyright protection. To do so, your account will likely get shut down, and it may also immediately subject you to a copyright infringement lawsuit. Number two, which I put on there, is of course, respecting privacy rights again. Limit your live streaming of other people to public places. Procure releases if you're using it for a commercial purpose. But again, best advice would be just don't live stream in public for commercial purposes. Do that in a place that you own. And then finally, what I put is there is be very careful about using another company's registered trademark as a hashtag for your broadcast. Those are so easily detectable, and large corporations monitor that. They are very, very vigilant in monitoring for unauthorized use of their logo or name, and you will almost immediately get a cease and desist letter if you start using, hashtag Coca-Cola or something like that. Now, I should also mention, because we're talking about legal risks, this whole thing about the legal implications relating to archiving of your live stream videos. Meerkat doesn't archive. Once you're finished broadcasting, you're done. Periscope archives it for about 24 hours. Facebook, on the other hand, you are then archived forever. It stays on your page and people can view it over and over and over until you remove it. That means that if your original broadcast was illegal, you can be sued for multiple counts of infringing upon the copyright holder's legal rights. And that can get, as you can probably guess, very, very expensive. So finally, I'll end with this. Some live streamers have tried, in defending some of these lawsuits, have tried to raise a defense that the Digital Millennial Copyright Act, the safe harbor provision of that act, protects them and their live streaming and actions from liability. Now, if you're familiar with that act, I'd be surprised. Not many people are, but what that is, that act was passed to shield the live streaming services themselves from liability, because they can't constantly monitor what other people are doing live on their service. So the law, which YouTube relies upon over and over consistently to protect itself, states that streaming services are protected if they respond promptly to rights owners' takedown requests and don't have actual knowledge of infringement. But that will definitely not protect you yourself from an infringement claim if you knowingly broadcast illegal material. So considering obviously we all walk around and carry our smartphones and can have a camera accessible at all times, I think live streaming is probably here to stay. As Marjorie talked about last week, it can be an invaluable tool for you and your business, but just be smart, use common sense. Don't be stupid. Don't broadcast material that other people had to pay for. You had to pay for yourself, and you don't own. Don't be creepy and invade other people's privacy, and procure releases if you're using it for a business purpose. And that will protect you from pretty much every single expensive legal claim. So I think that pretty much sums it up. If anybody has any questions about the legal risks of live streaming, we'd be happy to talk about it. Yes, ma'am.